Oh, hey, there's a camera here attached to the squid tripod that I set up a minute ago. So I'm here at Antietam battlefield. It's a beautiful day in the middle of October, which is a little disconcerting that it's 70 degrees and gorgeous on about when we're nearly a month into autumn. But you know, it is what it is. The leaves are starting to turn. There's some signs of traditional autumn in the air, but it's, well, once upon a time I would have called it unseasonable warmth, but now it's rapidly just kind of becoming the way things are in this time of year in this part of the world. But it was a nice day, and I decided to take advantage of it by coming here to the battlefield and climbing this tree. And tree climbing is something that I've talked about before in my videos, and it's something that I just enjoy doing. When I get an opportunity to do it, it reminds me of when I was a boy. I had a big pine tree in my backyard, a lot like this one that I'm climbing right now. And I would climb that pine tree every chance I got. And I think it's a good thing for adults. And I'm 42, so I think I would qualify as an adult. I think it's a good thing for adults to go back and do things that you did when you were a kid, if you have that opportunity, if those activities are available to you, and if you're still physically capable of doing them, whether it's climbing trees or playing a game or going to a particular place or whatever. I think it's good to do things that put you in touch in a real physical, tactile way with things you did when you were a kid. I know that folks like me who were fortunate enough to have had a nice childhood, a childhood worth remembering, will often think back on our childhoods and will remember them fondly. But sometimes I think it really helps to remember what it was like to actually be a child. And I've been thinking about this for the past few days because it's a Sunday as I'm recording this. The Friday before, I had my Ask Away live stream on my channel. And someone in the live chat said something like, I don't have faith in the young people of this generation. Everybody's too easily offended and everybody makes everything political. And if World War II were to happen today, I just don't think that the young people of this generation would be able to get the job done the way the greatest generation did back in the 40s. And to his credit, the guy who made that comment in the chat came back later and left a comment on the live stream and said, you know, maybe I was just having a bad day. Maybe I was being cranky. Some of the things I said weren't fair. And you know, good for him. Credit to him for saying that. And I realized that I think a lot of people who express thoughts like that and have attitudes like that about the younger generation, they, and myself too, we all sort of are susceptible to this kind of thinking. We look back on the way things were when we were kids, and we sort of assume that things back then were better. And we have stock thoughts and phrases that we sort of default to. They don't make them like they used to. You know, things just aren't the same as they were back when I was a kid. In my day, you know, the whole idea of the good old days. And I think a good way to combat those thoughts, because I do think those thoughts, though understandable, are kind of toxic. A good way to combat those thoughts and those feelings is to try and remind ourselves of what it was actually like to be a child and what sorts of things people said about young people when we were kids. Because when I was a kid, adults said the same thing that adults now say about kids today and about the world in general today. Everybody's too sensitive. Back then they didn't say woke, they said politically correct, but it's the same sort of idea. People are too politically correct. Everybody takes offense at everything. You can't say anything anymore because somebody will get offended. Kids today are too soft. Kids today aren't tough like they were back when I was little. And if we had World War II today, well, I just don't know if this generation would get it done. And then about 20 years ago, 21 years ago, actually, as of this year, 9/11 happened. And a whole bunch of young people back then signed up for the military and went overseas and got it done. Unfortunately, in wars that they never should have been asked to fight, in wars that actually made no sense and bore little or no connection to the terrorist attack on 9/11 that was used as the justification for them. But nevertheless, the personal courage and the personal valor shown by many of those young people back then who joined the armed services and went overseas to fight for what they believed was a good cause or what they thought was fighting for their country, acquitted themselves with great distinction and were incredibly brave and admirable in their actions. And yes, there were some who were just complete pieces of shit who committed war crimes. Unfortunately, just as there were pieces of shit who committed war crimes during World War II and Vietnam and any other conflict. It's just, unfortunately, one of the dark sides of human nature that there are some individuals or groups of individuals or certain situations that cause people to act in these deplorable and inexcusable ways, but it doesn't reflect on the entire generation. You know, there are shitty people who are in the younger generations today. There are lots of young people who are my age and younger who are huge pieces of fucking shit. Hi, Ben Shapiro, you smarmy fuck. And many other examples as well. But there are many, many more examples of people who are of my age and much younger than me, people who are typically considered to be young people now that I am rapidly approaching middle age, although I have not yet reached that point. Thank you very much. Who are incredible people, who are outstanding individuals. So people have always said that. People have always said, well, the young people, young people today aren't shit compared to how we were when I was a kid. And people have always thought that the world when they were kids was better and the world today is going to hell. Oh, kids today, young people, they're always on their phones. All they want to do is surf the internet or look at memes or make TikTok videos or text their friends. They always have their face buried in a phone, right? When I was a kid, it was old-fashioned telephones. It wasn't carry in your pocket smartphones like the one I'm recording this video on. It was kids, especially teenagers, all they do is talk on the phone. She's always in her room. He's always in his room. They're always talking on their phone. They're always talking on the phone. Why don't you get outside? Go do something outside, right? Parents, when I was a kid, were making the same kinds of complaints about young people back then as people my age and older make about young people today. And go back and back and back through the generations and you'll find the same thing. It might be a different piece of technology or a different trend or a different kind of common behavior among kids of that era, but there's always going to be older people who complain about the things that the younger people are doing and talk about how, well, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Things aren't the same as they used to be because these kids today, they're always on the phone, or they're always out hanging with their friends, or they're always going to the movies, or they're always watching TV, or they're always listening to the radio. My dad occasionally would talk like a grown-up from the 40s or 50s. I imagine he said things to me that were sometimes said to him by his father in moments of frustration. He used to refer to our television, which he watched just as much, if not more than I did, as an idiot box. And whenever he was mad at me for something, or he wanted me to go do something, or felt that I hadn't been, carrying my weight in the house, hadn't been doing the chores I was supposed to do, or I wasn't getting good enough grades in school, or whatever the problem was, he would say, the problem is, instead of doing what you're supposed to do, you sit here and you stare at that idiot box for hours on end. The same quote-unquote idiot box that he would also watch for hours on end. So parents have always, and my dad is a wonderful guy, and I'm not trying to throw my dad under the bus. My dad was a great dad, and he's a great guy. But parents have always said these things about kids, going down and down and down through the generations. So I really think it helps when you have those thoughts, when you have those feelings, as I think we all sometimes do from time to time. You look out at the state of things, or you see a young person or a group of young people maybe doing something that you do think is foolish or you think is a waste of time, or you look at the way things are in the world, depressing things happening in the news, dismaying social trends or things going on, and you think, I feel like we're going in a wrong direction here. I feel like things aren't as good as they used to be. I really think it helps to get back in touch, not just with memories of your childhood and nostalgic feelings of how things used to be, but remember how it really was when you were a child. Put yourself back into the shoes of a young person. And remember that back when you were a kid, people said the same things back then as people say about young people now. And remember that there are young people in the world today who are doing extraordinary things, who are doing extraordinarily brave things, who are protesting to make the world a better place, who are protesting corrupt and violent and unfair and unjust actions of their government, local, state, federal, whatever, who are protesting in war zones, who are fighting in wars around the world. Think of the young people who are helping to hold the Russian army at bay in Ukraine. Those people, and many of them are young people. They certainly haven't failed any sort of bravery test. They certainly haven't shown themselves to be any less worthy in that way than the World War II generation. Think about the young people in Iran, women and men, who are protesting the systematic mistreatment, the systematic oppression and degradation and violence perpetrated against women that has been the status quo in that country, that has been imposed on those people by their country's governmental regime for as long as most of them can remember. And at the threat of their freedom and even their lives, they take to the streets in defiance of the laws, in defiance of the authorities, and they protest. Think about the young people, young women, especially in Afghanistan, who face similar odds, face similar opposition, and protest to fight for their right to be educated. Think about young people all over the world. Think about young people in Mexico and further south in Central and South America who will trek thousands of miles across treacherous, unforgiving terrain to reach the United States, just on the hope that they might find asylum, they might find refuge, they might find a chance at a better life. That takes real courage. That takes real mettle. That takes something other than the softness and the weakness that is often attributed to young people by those of us when we express those kinds of thoughts I've been talking about. So think of those things, and think of the fact that when you were a kid, older people talked about people of your generation the same way people of your generation now talk about younger generations. And remember that, yeah, there are always shitty people in the world. There are always examples you can point to of the younger generation falling behind or not pulling its weight or whatever. But it's always been so. And just as that has always been so, there have always been young people who are not just capable, but eager to carry the weight, to shoulder the load, and in most cases to actually drag things further into the future than the older generation wants to push for greater, bolder social progress than older people often want to. And that has always been so too, and that's something to think about and to be encouraged by. And maybe if you can find something that reminds you of what things were like when you were a kid, it'll put you in that mindset, and you'll feel a little better about yourself and about the world, and feel a little more hopeful about the direction things might go if we all work hard and pull in the right direction together. Well, if you'll excuse me, I have about another half of this tree to climb, so I'll see you later. Thought I forgot you, did you?